I'm gonna tell you a secret. Sketching is one of my biggest insecurities. It's one of my favorite parts of the creative practice because it's so full of exploration and play, but it's also one of the things I'm most self-conscious about. A lot of you have been asking me for a while to make a sketch with me type of video, or even just to see a little bit of a closer look at my sketching process. For months now, I've been hiding behind this guise of,
well, sketching is my sacred space, and I don't really want to interrupt that precious time with a camera looming over my head.
And while this is true to a certain extent, it was only a part of the reason. Let me rewind. I used to take my sketchbook with me everywhere. Doctor's appointments, a day at the lake, church, grocery shopping. My sketchbook and pencil went everywhere with me. I would get so completely lost in my own little creative world, and I didn't really care if anybody saw me sketching. I didn't care if the sketches were ugly, I just explored and enjoyed my practice. And let me tell you, I was prolific in sketching. I could fill sketchbook after sketchbook so quickly. It was spread after spread full of characters and vignettes and random objects, basically anything you could think of. But after I started turning my art into a business, I also started getting burnt out. And as I began to burn out, I kind of just stopped bringing my sketchbook around with me. Even though sketching was something I had previously loved, I would literally itch to do it. But I now lumped it into the category of work, so creating was no longer much of a joy for me. It was just a part of my career. And even when I did want to sketch during out-of-office hours, so to speak, I wouldn't let myself because I thought I was trying to maintain this kind of work-life balance. But that's a story for another time. I think sketching relies very heavily on momentum. When you make a habit of sketching every day, or even just every week, it's easier to keep going. You've built sketching into your identity, and that's not something you can easily let go of. But have you ever noticed how when you miss like one day or 1 week of sketching, it can feel so incredibly difficult to get back into it? Sketching is like anything else in life. You have to practice regularly or your creative muscles just start to get out of shape. You forget how to play in your sketchbook. Sometimes you even forget how to hold a pencil and draw at all. You've lost that momentum, and gaining it back is a really big challenge. So over the last couple of years, I tried to get back into my sketchbook again. But honestly, I felt like a complete stranger to it. I was a stranger to my own sketchbook, and I didn't need any other strangers hovering over that process. I was so self-conscious sketching anywhere besides the comfort of my own room. I didn't want anybody else to see just how much I was struggling to get to know my art again. So I didn't bring my sketchbook around with me when I left the house, let alone point a camera at it. Fast forward to the end of 2023. So I started listening to the problems that other artists were having in their creative practices, and I realized we're all in the same boat. Our struggles are not unique to us. So I began to build a workbook to help creatives nurture their creative practice and to help me nurture mine. As I began to go through the workbook myself, I set an intention to fill 5 pages in my messy sketchbook every week for the whole month of January to nurture my creative practice and to foster a willingness to show up to it consistently. The point wasn't to make anything good. And thank goodness, because I made a lot of crap, let me tell ya. The point was simply to make and to enjoy making. I needed to fall in love with the creative practice again. Now I won't lie, I was a little teary-eyed the first week. I felt like I'd regressed so much in my sketching skills. I felt like I had absolutely no imagination and literally could not sketch anything without a reference. Anatomy was non-existent, ideas were non-existent.
Line quality, nowhere to be found.
But with every day, I reconnected a smidgen more with my creativity, and I started to create some things that I was actually really proud of. And by the end of the first week, I felt just a little bit more fulfilled as an artist. I started to remember why I loved art in the first place. It's such a space of adventure and joy and fulfillment for me. I loved the unpredictability of just making something, of drawing a line and being unsure of what it would turn into. When I got out of my own head and just showed up to sketch, the pencil and paper kind of took care of the rest. And the uncomfortable parts of the practice didn't take away from that. They were simply a part of the process. So as the weeks of January went on, I began to nurture both a love for my creative practice as a whole, as well as a respect for even the ugliest of sketches.
And let me tell you, there were so So many.
I almost never like every single sketch on a page, and I'm learning to be okay with that. I began to acknowledge every sketch as being an equal part of my creative practice. So during this process, I started to learn more about what I like to create and how I like to create. I found myself being looser and more carefree when sketching with a pen or with a hard-to-erase colored pencil because I had to simply trust myself to know what I was doing, or trust that I could incorporate whatever permanent mistakes I made into the sketch in a creative way. Or sometimes I'd just slap a sticky note over the top of it and redraw it. That's okay too. I didn't set any limitations on what I could sketch. I wanted to create a space where I could just explore anything. Some days I practiced sketching dogs, some days I did gesture studies, some days I sketched the little bandana girl in her tomato garden. I explored structure sketching, facial expressions, character turnarounds. The sky really was the limit, and each day I sketched whatever I wanted to. Sometimes finding what you love to create starts with first discovering what you don't. And the only way to do that is to try a little bit of everything. Along the way, I realized that gesture matters more to me than anatomy. A pose can be anatomically accurate, but completely lifeless without gesture. I'd rather draw an arm and have it be a little too long and convey the gesture of reaching for something. And that preference makes sense given how passionate I am about storytelling. I'm so much more interested in a pose being believable than in it being accurate, if that makes sense. Anywho, I also discovered a love for the folds and drapes in fabrics, especially in the way that baggy jeans create these unique folded shapes when they're rolled up at the bottom, or the way a chunky sweater bends over on itself in the crook of an arm. I also realized that I don't always love to draw a character the same way every time. Sometimes I do like to draw them a little bit more realistically with softer expressions and more quote-unquote standard poses. And like I said earlier, sometimes I like to really exaggerate a gesture or a facial expression to help tell the story I want to tell. So throughout this 1-month sketching journey, I began to understand better that the creative practice is not one size fits all. Some people only love to draw flowers, and some people love to draw anything and everything. Some people are drawn to macabre undertones, and some are drawn to cheerful themes. Some people prefer to work mixed media, and others only want to paint with oils. You're part of the creative community. You know how often we all make such a big deal out of
finding your style or niching down.
But at the end of the day, that just doesn't work for everyone. Creatives are always learning and exploring and growing both as people and as artists. So as I began to grow in my love for creativity again and mature just a little bit in my attitude towards it, I started something new. I started filming my sketches. I told myself I didn't need to show the footage to anyone, but I just wanted to get used to the camera being on while I was sketching. Now, I didn't do this with every sketchbook session because I don't feel like it's necessary or healthy even to record every part of your practice. I do think it's important to keep some parts of your creative practice just to yourself. But I realized I could record a little bit more of it without taking away from the magic of it. I could still enjoy my sketching practice even if a camera was watching. I still had a problem though. Did I actually want to share what I'd filmed? Although I was recognizing the uncomfy, ugly parts of the practice as being equal members of it, I still shied away from sharing those. I'd fallen into the same trap we all do. We want people to see the best of us, so we only share the best of us. We don't share the failed paintings and sketches, only the ones that we're really proud of. And the more I thought about this, the more I realized this brings down the creative community as a whole. It paints a very unrealistic picture of what the creative practice actually looks like. Newer artists see creativity as this perfect, cozy, borderline easy process. They see a perfectly composed sketchbook page, but not the tragic disaster of a page before it. They see a beautiful illustration completed in, 2 or 3 hours, but they don't see the failed value and color comps the artist cycled through first to arrive at this one, because the artist didn't share those. And more experienced artists see these quote-unquote perfect art practices while they're going through the frustrating parts themselves, and they feel like they're the only ones experiencing those. If you've been around for a while, you know I preach so often on this channel that failure is an important part of the practice. That it's hard and uncomfortable sometimes. That mistakes help you to grow and that you shouldn't be ashamed of them. But I rarely put my money where my mouth was, so to speak. I hid the ugly parts of my own practice. The truth is, I fail every day. And I think if we're honest, most artists do. You lay down a brushstroke you didn't intend, or you paint your color block-ins on the same layer as your sketch. You draw the eyes a little too close together, or the perspective of your new cityscape sketch is an absolute train wreck. And we don't show each other these things because, heaven forbid, the world should know that you, an imperfect person, are also an imperfect artist. When we refuse to address failure in our creative practice, we make it a lot deeper than it is. We paint it as this artistic enemy, when really, it's just a teacher that doesn't sugarcoat things when you make a mistake. Failure tells you,
Hey, you did this wrong. Here's how you can make it better. Give it another try.
So that's where we're at today. Here's me sketching with you. Here's me making mistakes and not loving every sketch on the page. But here's me also remembering that they're all a part of the creative practice. So I hope that by sharing this with you, you feel a little bit more comfortable in your own art practice. That if you've been feeling like you're the only creative person that struggles and sketches and erases and sketches and erases again, that you feel a little less alone.
Welcome to the Imperfect Artist Club. Everyone is welcome. We brought snacks.
But seriously, I want to be more intentional about sharing the creative practice as a whole and being more vulnerable with the art community. Will there be some folks out there who say unkind things or unhelpful criticisms when I share the ugly art? Sure. But those people come for the pieces that I'm proud of too, so it's not that big a deal. The point is that I want to show newer artists that it's okay to make mistakes and laugh at yourself a little, and to remind more experienced artists that they're not alone in their frustrations. At the risk of sounding like a terrible 2000s Disney movie,
We're all in this together.
moving on. I've been keeping up with my sketchbook practice into this month, which I'm really, really happy about. I have a lot of new ideas born out of these sketches that I really want to paint at some point. But as we chatted about earlier, all this sketching has also produced a lot of failures. And all these failures shine a light on the areas that I struggle most with, like turning a form in space, or leg anatomy, or sketching plants. So a lot of my patrons have been asking for some more educational content, so I pitched an idea to them. So many of them were on board and super excited about it. So starting in March, I'm opening up the Curious Creatives tier. Each month we'll pick a new study topic, kind of like a mini quest, if you will. Basically, we're going on a monthly adventure together to explore and learn about a new topic and level up our skill sets. I'll be sharing reference photos and creating breakdown tutorial posts for you to follow along with. I'm also thinking about maybe starting a Discord channel for everyone to share their progress and get feedback from one another. I don't know, maybe we'll vote on it. But you can be sure, y'all are gonna be seeing my many, many fails as I learn along with you. I'm really excited to be able to grow together. Every time I make a more educational video for YouTube, I end up learning so much more about whatever it is I'm teaching, and I think this is also gonna be a great opportunity for me to learn too. It's always a lot more fun diving into new topics with a community, and my patrons are literally the best.
The real MVPs. So encouraging. So supportive.
Anywho, if you want to join us, you can head on over to Patreon via the link in the description to join us on our first quest. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed chatting with me about the more uncomfy parts of the creative practice, and I hope you enjoyed sketching with me. If you're wanting to dive deeper into your own creative practice, then check out this video where we chat about my favorite tips for building a creative practice that's totally tailored to you. Huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon for supporting me in my art journey. Y'all are absolutely amazing. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye guys!